My name is Samantha Davis, and at 32 years old, I experienced the most humiliating moment of my life at our family Christmas party last December. My sister Ashley stood in the center of our parents' living room, holding the handmade photo album I'd spent weeks creating, and loudly called me a cheapskate, while everyone watched. The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me. That moment, that cruel, public mockery, became the breaking point after years of being the family punching bag. What happened next changed our family forever. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from, hit subscribe, and stick around to hear how I finally stood up to my materialistic sister and transformed our toxic family dynamic. Growing up as the older sister in the Davis family meant I was expected to be the responsible one. From an early age, my parents made it clear that I should set an example for Ashley, who was 3 years younger. But somehow, being responsible in our household translated to being practical and frugal, qualities that were rarely celebrated. Our family home in suburban Connecticut was pristine and perfect, much like the image my mother Karen worked tirelessly to maintain. Dad worked as an investment banker, providing the means for Mom's relentless pursuit of keeping up with the neighbors. Brand names, luxury cars, and extravagant vacations were the currency of respect in our household. My mother measured success in designer labels and my father in dollar signs. Ashley figured this out early. By age 7, she had learned to bat her eyelashes and ask for the most expensive toy in the store. But Daddy, everyone at school has one, became her catchphrase, reliably followed by my father's wallet emerging from his pocket. I watched this pattern repeat for years, feeling a strange mix of disgust and envy. For my 10th birthday, I asked for a telescope. I had developed a fascination with astronomy after a school field trip to the planetarium. Instead, I received a designer dress that was uncomfortable and impractical for a child who preferred climbing trees to attending tea parties. "You'll grow into appreciating nice things, Samantha," my mother said with a tight smile when I couldn't hide my disappointment. That same year, Ashley received both the dollhouse and the playhouse she had demanded for her birthday. When I turned 16, I wanted a reliable used car to drive myself to my after-school job at the local library. My parents insisted on buying me a brand new BMW instead, a car that made me uncomfortable as I parked it in the library's staff lot. "A Davis doesn't drive a beater," my father proclaimed. I drove it with constant anxiety about scratches and dents, feeling like an imposter behind the wheel. Meanwhile, Ashley grew into her role as the family princess. Her Sweet 16 party cost more than my entire college application process. While I worked weekends, she shopped with friends. When I started saving for college, she started a collection of designer handbags. The pattern was clear and consistent. Ashley spent, parents approved. I saved, parents worried. I worked through college at State University, maintaining a scholarship and graduating with minimal debt. Ashley attended an expensive private college, changed majors 3 times, and graduated 2 years late with our parents footing the entire bill. I chose a practical degree in accounting while Ashley studied fashion merchandising, a field she never actually worked in. Now at 32, I lived within my means in a modest, but comfortable townhouse that I owned outright, after years of aggressive saving and smart investments. I had an emergency fund, retirement savings, and took 1 or 2 modest vacations annually. By conventional standards, I was financially healthy. Ashley, now 29, lived in a luxury apartment she couldn't afford, drove a car with payments higher than her utility bills, and maintained a wardrobe that belonged on a celebrity. Every few months, she would call my parents in tears over an unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, or a tempting vacation opportunity she couldn't pass up. They always helped her, claiming it was just until she got on her feet. Despite these differences, I tried to maintain a relationship with my sister. We met for coffee every few weeks, attended family functions together, and exchanged birthday and Christmas gifts. I genuinely loved Ashley and hoped that as we aged, she might gain some perspective on what truly mattered in life. Last Thanksgiving, just a month before the Christmas incident, I noticed the strain in my parents' faces when Ashley announced her plans to renovate her apartment's kitchen. "It's only $40,000, she said casually over pumpkin pie. "The countertops are absolutely hideous." I saw my father's quick glance at my mother, a silent communication that spoke volumes. Later, when helping with dishes, my mother seemed distracted. "Everything okay, Mom?" I asked. "Of course, honey," she replied with that same tight smile from my childhood. Just thinking about Christmas arrangements. I decided that year to put extra thought into my family gifts. For my parents, I booked a weekend at the bed and breakfast where they had honeymooned. For Ashley, I spent weeks creating a personalized photo album chronicling our sisterhood from childhood to present day, with handwritten captions and memories beneath each carefully selected photo. I included funny moments, tender ones, and milestones we had shared. The cover was embossed with Sisters Through Time and decorated with our birthstones. I was genuinely excited to give Ashley this gift. Despite our differences, I believed she would appreciate the sentiment and the hours of work I had invested. This wasn't about being cheap. The materials alone cost over $100, not counting the dozens of hours spent creating it. More importantly, it represented my genuine desire to celebrate our bond despite our different approaches to life. In the days leading up to Christmas, I wrapped the album in beautiful paper with a handmade bow. I truly believed this gift would touch my sister's heart, and perhaps begin to bridge the materialistic divide between us. I couldn't have been more wrong. The annual Davis family Christmas gathering was always held at my parents' colonial-style home, which Mom transformed into something resembling a department store holiday display. This year was no exception. Every surface sparkled with silver and gold decorations. The 12-foot tree in the great room was professionally decorated, and the air smelled of expensive candles and the catering company's hors d'oeuvres. I arrived early to help set up, carefully placing my gifts under the tree. The photo album for Ashley was wrapped in silver paper, with a handmade blue bow that had taken me 3 attempts to perfect. I felt a flutter of excitement thinking about her reaction to such a personal gift. "Samantha, darling, would you please fix the place cards?" The calligrapher made Thomas's name with an H and Ashton without one, my mother said as she breezed past in her red designer dress, not waiting for my response. By 6 o'clock, the house was filled with family members and my parents' closest friends, about 20 people in total. Ashley arrived fashionably late as usual, making an entrance in a new black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Sorry I'm late," she announced to the room. Traffic was insane at the mall. I had to grab a few last-minute things. She carried several shopping bags from luxury stores along with her hastily wrapped gifts. Dinner was served at 7, a lavish spread of prime rib, poached salmon, and at least a dozen sides. The conversation revolved around vacations taken and planned, renovations completed, and vehicles purchased. I remained mostly quiet, occasionally adding a comment about a book I'd enjoyed, or a hiking trail I'd discovered. After dinner came the part of the evening I'd been anticipating, the gift exchange. We gathered in the living room, where the mountain of presents waited beneath the towering tree. My father played Santa, as he had every year, distributing gifts one by one so everyone could watch each person's reaction. Ashley received my gift toward the middle of the exchange. I leaned forward slightly as she took the silver package, feeling a mix of excitement and inexplicable anxiety. "This is from Samantha," she said, reading the tag. Her fingers worked quickly to remove the paper, revealing the leather-bound album with her initials and our birthstones embedded in the cover. For a brief moment, I saw genuine surprise cross her face as she opened the first page. She flipped through a few photos. Us as children building sandcastles, as teenagers at her dance recital, a candid shot from a family vacation where we were actually getting along. This is, she began, and I held my breath, a photo album. Her tone had already shifted, the initial surprise replaced with something else. I made it, I explained, my voice sounding smaller than intended. It's all our memories together. I wrote about each one, Anne. You made it. Ashley interrupted, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising. She looked around the room, her gaze connecting with our cousin Brittany, with whom she had always shared a particular bond based largely on their mutual love of shopping. Then came the laugh, a short, dismissive sound that cut through the room. So this is, what, a craft project? Did you get a senior discount on the supplies, too? A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. My cheeks began to burn. I just thought it would be meaningful, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Meaningful would be remembering that I asked for the new Gucci bag, Ashley replied, closing the album and setting it aside without looking at the rest of the pages I had so carefully created. I didn't realize we were in high school again, making macaroni art. Ashley, my mother warned half-heartedly, but there was little conviction in her tone. What? Ashley continued, gaining momentum as she sensed she had an audience. I'm just saying, for someone who has a good job, and no kids or husband to spend money on, my sister is quite the cheapskate. Everyone else managed to shop at an actual store. The room went completely silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me, some pitying, some amused, none coming to my defense. Not my parents, not my cousins, not the family friends who had watched me grow up. In that moment, I felt utterly alone. That album took weeks to make, I said quietly, my voice threatening to break. And it shows, Ashley replied with mock sympathy. Very crafty. Very budget conscious. Very you. She turned away from me to retrieve her gift for our mother, an extravagant designer scarf that prompted appropriate oohs and ahs from the assembled guests. Just like that, the moment passed for everyone but me. The gift exchange continued while I sat frozen, the burning in my cheeks spreading until my entire body felt flushed with humiliation. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door behind me and gripping the edge of the marble vanity. My reflection showed a woman I barely recognized, eyes shining with unshed tears, cheeks blotchy with emotion, shoulders hunched in defeat. After composing myself as best I could, I returned to the party only long enough to make my excuses. I'm not feeling well, I told my mother, who barely looked at me as she nodded her understanding. No one questioned my early departure, or seemed particularly concerned. I retrieved my coat and slipped out the front door into the cold December night. The photo album remained where Ashley had discarded it, partially covered by discarded wrapping paper. I left it there, unable to bear taking home such a painful reminder of my naive belief that thoughtfulness would be valued over price tags in my family. Driving home through neighborhoods decorated with Christmas lights, tears finally spilled down my cheeks. The humiliation was bad enough, but worse was the realization that no one, not a single person in that room, had stood up for me or recognized the cruelty of Ashley's behavior. By the time I reached my townhouse, something besides hurt had begun to take root in my chest. A quiet, steady anger was building, not just at Ashley, but at the entire family dynamic I had accepted for over 30 years. As I crawled into bed that night, I made myself a promise. This would be the last Christmas I spent as the family punching bag. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur. I declined my parents' annual New Year's Eve party invitation, citing a non-existent stomach bug. Instead, I spent the evening on my couch with a journal, documenting every instance I could remember where Ashley's extravagance was celebrated while my practicality was mocked or dismissed. The list grew disturbingly long. Birthday parties where she received twice as many gifts. College years where her apartment was furnished by our parents while I worked part-time to afford basic necessities. Family vacations where she brought empty suitcases to fill with shopping purchases that our parents subsidized. The pattern was painfully clear on paper. After making the list, I called my best friend Rachel, who had witnessed much of this dynamic over the 20 years we'd known each other. "I always wanted to say something," Rachel admitted after I recounted the Christmas incident. "But I worried you'd think I was just being negative about your family." "Have I been blind?" I asked her. "Is it really as bad as it seems looking back?" Rachel's pause told me everything. "Sam, you've normalized a lot of behavior that most people would consider deeply unfair. You're always the one making excuses for them, always the one adjusting your expectations." Her words hit hard. Had I really been making excuses all this time? "What would you do?" I asked. Honestly, I'd probably cut them off for a while. But that's me. You've always been more forgiving than I am. She paused again. "What I think you need to do is stop enabling the pattern. You're the responsible one they count on to just take it. What happens if you don't?" That question lingered in my mind for days. What would happen if I didn't just take it anymore? I scheduled an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Bennett, who specialized in family dynamics. In our first session, I unloaded the Christmas story and as much background as I could fit into 50 minutes. "What you're describing sounds like a family system with rigidly defined roles," she explained. "You were assigned the role of responsible one while your sister got to be the special one. These roles can become incredibly restrictive over time." "But why?" I asked. "Why would my parents set things up this way?" "Family systems often develop to meet the emotional needs of the parents, not necessarily the children," Dr. Bennett replied. "Your mother's focus on appearances suggests she may have significant insecurities. Your father's enabling behavior might come from a place of guilt or conflict avoidance." We discussed healthy boundaries and the difference between reacting out of hurt versus responding from a place of self-respect. "Your sister's behavior was clearly hurtful," Dr. Bennett acknowledged. "But addressing this effectively means understanding the deeper dynamics at play." Something she said resonated deeply with me. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions. Had I been enabling not just my parents' preferential treatment, but also Ashley's financial irresponsibility, by always keeping the peace? By never calling out the inequality? By pretending it didn't hurt when they dismissed my choices? My soul-searching led me to research family dynamics and financial psychology. I discovered articles about financial enabling, materialism as a coping mechanism, and the psychological impact of always keeping up appearances. Each piece I read seemed to describe my family with unsettling accuracy. 2 weeks after Christmas, a revelation came from an unexpected source. My father called to ask for my help with some tax documents, a task he periodically requested due to my accounting background. While reviewing his files, I came across a folder labeled Ashley 2024. My ethical boundaries warred with curiosity, and curiosity won. Inside was documentation for a $100,000 loan my parents had given Ashley just 3 weeks before Christmas for a kitchen renovation. The same renovation she had casually mentioned at Thanksgiving as if it were a simple purchase. With shaking hands, I opened another folder labeled Ashley History and found records of multiple loans over the past 5 years, totaling more than $300,000. None appeared to have been paid back. No wonder my mother had looked strained when Ashley mentioned the kitchen renovation. They were already supporting her lifestyle to a degree I had never imagined. I carefully returned the documents to their proper place, my mind racing. This wasn't just about a hurtful comment at Christmas anymore. My sister was systematically draining my parents' retirement security with her extravagance, while simultaneously mocking me for being financially responsible. That evening, I returned to Dr. Bennett's advice about compassionate boundaries. Simply cutting off my family would be the easiest solution emotionally, but it wouldn't address the destructive pattern that was harming all of us in different ways. Ashley was trapped in a cycle of dependency and entitlement. My parents were enabling behavior that would eventually leave everyone financially strained. And I was allowing myself to be devalued while watching this slow-motion train wreck unfold. The truth hit me with startling clarity. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about breaking a dysfunctional pattern that was damaging my entire family. My sister's cheapskate comment wasn't the problem, it was merely a symptom of a much deeper issue. By the end of January, I had made my decision. I wouldn't retaliate against Ashley or cut off my family. Instead, I would do something much harder and potentially more transformative. I would tell the truth, set boundaries, and offer a path toward healthier family dynamics, all at once. My initial fantasies of revenge were admittedly satisfying. I imagined showing up at the next family gathering with receipts documenting Ashley's financial dependence on our parents. I pictured the shocked expressions, the stammered explanations, the righteous validation I would feel. But these daydreams always left me feeling hollow afterward. Humiliating my sister would make me no better than she had been at Christmas. More importantly, it wouldn't solve the underlying problems. I needed a more constructive approach. I called my colleague Mark, a financial advisor who specialized in family wealth dynamics. "What you're describing is actually pretty common," Mark told me over coffee. Financial enablement can be as destructive as other forms of enabling behavior. The parents think they're helping, but they are actually preventing their adult child from developing financial responsibility. "So what would you recommend?" I asked. "Education and transparency," he said without hesitation. "The most powerful tool is open, honest conversation about money, something most families avoid like the plague. When everyone understands the real impact of their financial choices on themselves and others, better decisions usually follow." His advice aligned with what I had been thinking. Instead of an ambush or confrontation, I would create an opportunity for my family to see the situation clearly, perhaps for the first time. I decided to host a family financial health workshop, though I wouldn't call it that in the invitation. I would frame it as a special family dinner at my home, with an important discussion to follow. The key would be preparing thoroughly so that when defensive reactions inevitably arose, I could respond with calm facts rather than wounded emotions. Over the next 3 weeks, I prepared my home and myself. I cleaned my townhouse thoroughly, arranging it to be welcoming but unapologetically modest. I wanted my family to see that comfortable living didn't require excessive spending. I created a simple presentation about financial wellness, focusing on concepts like financial independence, the difference between assets and liabilities, and the psychology of spending. I made sure the material wasn't accusatory, but educational, with examples that didn't directly point to anyone in the family. For evidence of Ashley's financial situation, I didn't need to reveal that I had seen my father's files. My sister's Instagram account provided plenty of public documentation of her spending habits, luxury vacations, designer purchases, restaurant meals, all portrayed as if they were self-funded. I collected these alongside newspaper articles about the rising rate of parental support for adult children and the impact on retirement security. I also prepared materials about financial boundaries and healthy ways to express love that didn't involve monetary rescue. My goal wasn't to cut Ashley off from family support, but to help everyone see the current arrangement was ultimately harmful to her development, as well as our parents' future security. The most difficult part was crafting the individual invitations. I called my parents first, asking them to come to dinner to discuss something important. It's nothing bad, I assured them, just something I feel we need to talk about as a family. I deliberately avoided mentioning Ashley or Christmas. Inviting Ashley was trickier. Our communication since Christmas had been minimal. A few terse text exchanges, and one awkward phone call where neither of us mentioned the incident. I decided direct honesty was the best approach. Ashley, I'd like you to come to dinner at my place next Saturday, I said when she answered her phone. Mom and Dad will be there too. I want to talk about what happened at Christmas and some other family matters. Seriously? You're still upset about that? It was just a joke, Samantha. Don't be so sensitive, she replied. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. It wasn't just a joke to me. But there's more to discuss than just that. It would mean a lot if you came with an open mind. After some reluctance, she agreed, probably assuming our parents would take her side as they typically did. As the day approached, my anxiety grew. I rehearsed what I would say, practicing in front of the mirror to ensure my tone remained composed even when discussing painful topics. I reminded myself that my goal wasn't to win an argument, but to initiate healing. The evening before the dinner, I called Rachel for moral support. What if this backfires completely? I asked. What if they all just get defensive and nothing changes? Then you'll know you tried, she said simply. You can't control how they'll respond, Sam. You can only control whether you're willing to speak your truth. I slept poorly that night, alternating between determination and doubt. By morning, I had settled into a quiet resolve. This conversation was long overdue, regardless of the outcome. At minimum, I would no longer be complicit in my own diminishment. I spent the day preparing a meal that reflected my values, homemade but impressive, using quality ingredients prepared with care rather than expensive pre-made options. I set the table with the nice dishes I had collected piece by piece over the years, along with flowers from the local market and candles that created a warm atmosphere. By 5 o'clock, everything was ready. The presentation materials waited on my dining room sideboard. The evidence was organized but not prominently displayed. The meal was nearly finished cooking, filling the house with inviting aromas. As I checked my reflection one last time, I hardly recognized the confident woman looking back at me. Something had shifted during these weeks of preparation. The hurt from Christmas remained, but it no longer defined me. I was no longer simply reacting to a painful incident, but acting from a place of clarity about what needed to change. The doorbell rang at exactly 6. My parents stood on the doorstep, my mother's expression curious, my father's somewhat wary. Ashley arrived 10 minutes later, making her usual fashionably late entrance. As I welcomed them into my home, I felt strangely calm. The time for rehearsal was over. Whatever happened next would change our family dynamic forever, for better or worse. Dinner began pleasantly enough. My parents complimented the roast chicken and risotto, seeming genuinely impressed that I had made everything from scratch. Ashley picked at her food, occasionally glancing at her phone beneath the table. This is delicious, Samantha, my mother said. You always did have a knack for making things nice without going overboard. I couldn't tell if the comment was a genuine compliment or a subtle dig at my frugality. Either way, I smiled and thanked her. So what's this important discussion about? My father asked as we finished the main course. Your mother and I were speculating on the drive over. New job. Moving. Boyfriend. Actually, I said, Standing to clear the plates, I thought we could move to the living room for dessert and coffee. What I want to discuss will be more comfortable there. I could sense their curiosity and slight apprehension as they settled onto my couch and armchairs. I served coffee and a simple but elegant chocolate cake before taking a deep breath and beginning. First, I want to thank you all for coming. This isn't easy for me, but I believe it's important. I paused, meeting each of their eyes. The incident at Christmas, when Ashley called me a cheapskate for giving her a handmade gift, hurt me deeply. But it also made me reflect on patterns in our family that I think are harming all of us in different ways. Ashley immediately rolled her eyes. Are you serious? You invited us here for a lecture because I made one little joke. It wasn't a joke to me, Ashley, I said calmly. But you're right that this isn't just about that comment. It's about what that moment represented, the culmination of years of family dynamics around money and values. I turned to my makeshift presentation materials, flipping to a simple chart I had created. Did you know that financial disagreements are the leading cause of family estrangement? Or that parental financial support of adult children often leads to decreased financial capability and independence in the long run? My father shifted uncomfortably. Samantha, what exactly are you getting at? I'm talking about how we as a family have developed unhealthy attitudes toward money and material possessions, I said. We've created a dynamic where extravagance is rewarded and practicality is mocked. And I believe it's hurting all of us, especially Ashley. Ashley's face flushed. Don't you dare try to make this about helping me. You're just jealous, because I know how to enjoy life, while you pinch pennies like some depressed accountant. I had anticipated this reaction, and didn't take the bait. I understand why you might see it that way. But consider this. True financial health isn't about how much you spend, or how many luxury items you own. It's about independence, security, and making choices aligned with your actual values rather than appearances. I proceeded to explain basic financial wellness principles, keeping my tone educational rather than condescending. My mother listened with surprising attentiveness, while my father grew increasingly uncomfortable. Ashley alternated between defensive posturing and checking her phone. When I reached the section about financial enabling, my father interrupted. This is inappropriate, Samantha. Your sister's finances are none of your business. This was the opening I had been waiting for. Actually, Dad, they became my business when Ashley publicly ridiculed me for being financially responsible while she continues to depend on your support. The loans you've given her affect all of us, because they impact your retirement security, which ultimately affects the entire family. The room went silent. My father's face paled slightly. What loans are you referring to? I carefully laid out what I knew, the kitchen renovation loan, the pattern of financial bailouts, the total amount I had discovered. I was specific about the facts, without revealing how I had learned them. That's private family business, my mother interjected, her voice shaking slightly. Yes, it is family business, I agreed. And I am family. That's precisely my point. We've created a situation where Ashley's spending is subsidized while my saving is criticized. Where her financial choices remain unexamined while mine are labeled as character flaws. How is that healthy for any of us? Ashley's phone clattered to the floor as she stood up, face contorted with anger and embarrassment. You had no right to look into my personal finances. This is a complete invasion of privacy. I didn't need to investigate, Ashley. You broadcast your lifestyle on social media daily while living in an apartment you can't afford, driving a car with payments you can't make, and renovating a kitchen that someone else is paying for. Meanwhile, you mock me for living within my means and creating thoughtful gifts instead of buying expensive ones. My father had gone very quiet, a sign I recognized from childhood as deep discomfort. Your mother and I help both of our daughters in different ways, he finally said. Do you, Dad? When was the last time you helped me financially? When was the last time, I asked. I kept my voice gentle despite the rising tension. The issue isn't that you help Ashley. It's that you're enabling behavior that keeps her dependent rather than helping her become truly independent. My mother's composure finally cracked. What would you have us do? Let her struggle. Go without things she needs. There's a difference between needs and wants, Mom. And yes, sometimes struggling builds capability. I struggled through college with minimal help, and it taught me valuable skills. Ashley never had that opportunity, because you and Dad swooped in to rescue her from every financial challenge. Ashley's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of fury. You think you're so perfect with your budget, and your savings account, and your sensible little house. You have no idea what it's like to be expected to maintain a certain image. Mom and Dad always expected me to look the part of the successful daughter, while you got to do whatever you wanted. Her outburst revealed more than she likely intended. For the first time, I glimpsed how Ashley might view her own role in the family, not as the favored child, but as someone trapped by expectations of external success. You're right, Ashley, I said quietly. I don't know what that's like. Because no one ever expected me to look successful, they just expected me to be responsible. My mother suddenly stood up and walked to the window, her back to us. When she turned around, I was shocked to see tears on her cheeks. This is my fault, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I did this. The three of us stared at her in surprise. Karen, my father began, but she cut him off with a raised hand. No, George, let me speak. Samantha's right. She took a shaky breath. I grew up with nothing. My parents could barely keep the lights on. I swore my children would never know that kind of insecurity, that kind of shame. She looked directly at me. When you showed signs of being careful with money, I panicked. I thought you were heading down the same path of scarcity I grew up with. I pushed back against it, encouraged extravagance instead. She turned to Ashley. And when you embraced the lifestyle I thought would make you happy, I reinforced it without thinking about the long-term consequences. I wanted you both to have everything I didn't have. Instead, I've created division between you. My father cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with this level of emotional honesty. I suppose I haven't helped matters. I found it easier to write checks than to have difficult conversations. He looked at Ashley with unusual seriousness. Your mother and I won't be around forever, honey. What happens then? Ashley's expression wavered between defiance and fear. I'll figure it out. I always do. With our money, my father said quietly. That's not figuring it out. That's dependence. The room fell silent again, as the truth of his words sank in. Ashley looked away, but not before I caught the flash of genuine worry in her eyes. I didn't invite you here to place blame or shame anyone, I said, my voice gentler now. I invited you because I love you all, and I believe we can create a healthier dynamic. One where we support each other's growth rather than enabling destructive patterns. My mother wiped her eyes. What are you suggesting, exactly? I outlined what healthy financial boundaries might look like. Parents who offered guidance rather than bailouts. Siblings who respected each other's different approaches. A family that valued thoughtfulness over price tags. Ashley stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm not sitting here for a financial intervention from my penny-pinching sister. She grabbed her designer purse and headed for the door. To my surprise, my father followed her. Ashley, wait, he called, leaving me alone with my mother in a silence heavy with decades of unspoken truths. After Ashley stormed out with my father following, my mother and I sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. "I've been thinking about your father's retirement for a while now," she admitted. "He wants to stop working next year, but with the money we've given Ashley." She trailed off, her hands twisting in her lap. "Have you discussed this with him?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "We don't really talk about finances beyond the basics. He handles the money, I handle the social calendar. That's how it's always been." "Maybe that needs to change," I suggested. "Financial transparency is important in any relationship." We talked for nearly 2 hours that night, having perhaps the most honest conversation of our adult lives. My mother revealed her childhood poverty, the shame she had carried, and how she had channeled that into an obsession with appearances. I shared how her focus on material things had made me feel that my practical nature was somehow deficient. "I never meant to make you feel less valued," she said, her eyes filling with tears again. "I think in some ways I envied your confidence in living simply. I've never known how to do that." By the time my father returned, looking exhausted, my mother and I had reached a new understanding. He reported that Ashley had refused to discuss anything further, but had agreed to attend a family meeting the following weekend, primarily because he had made it clear that future financial support depended on her participation. That next meeting at my parents' house was tense but productive. With remarkable courage, my father opened their financial books to both Ashley and me, revealing the true state of their retirement savings and how Ashley's loans had impacted their financial security. "We can continue helping you at this level for approximately 3 more years," he told Ashley bluntly. "After that, our retirement becomes seriously compromised." The color drained from Ashley's face as she confronted the real numbers for perhaps the first time. "I never realized," she began, then stopped. "We never showed you," my father acknowledged. "That was our mistake. We established new family financial guidelines that day. My parents would help Ashley create her first realistic budget based on her actual income. They would offer matching funds for debt reduction rather than providing outright loans. Most importantly, we agreed to monthly family financial check-ins, where we would discuss our progress openly and honestly. The transition wasn't smooth. 2 weeks after our agreement, Ashley called my parents in tears over an unexpected car repair. My mother called me, uncertain about how to respond. "Remember, helping her solve the problem herself is different from solving it for her," I reminded Mom. Instead of sending money, my parents helped Ashley research affordable repair options and set up a payment plan. A month later, we had our first family dinner since the confrontation. The tension was palpable as Ashley arrived in a noticeably less extravagant outfit than usual. "I sold 3 designer bags," she announced without preamble as she sat down. "Paid off my smallest credit card." My father smiled with genuine pride, not for the designer bags she had once owned, but for the responsible decision she had made. It was a small step, but a significant one. Spring brought both challenges and progress. Ashley resisted the budget constraints, occasionally lashing out at family dinners when the topic of finances arose. "Not everyone wants to live like a monk, Samantha," she snapped during one particularly difficult evening. "There's a middle ground between monk and shopaholic," I replied calmly. "You'll find your balance." My parents occasionally backslid as well, secretly helping Ashley with expenses that weren't in her budget. When I discovered this, we had another difficult conversation about the difference between support and enabling. "Your father and I have spent 30 years parenting this way," my mother explained. "We can't change overnight." "I understand," I said. "But every time you bail her out secretly, you're telling her that budgets don't really matter, and that the rules don't apply to her." By summer, we had established family financial counseling sessions with a professional advisor. These neutral, facilitated discussions helped remove some of the emotional charge from our conversations about money. The counselor introduced tools and strategies that respected each family member's different relationship with finances while establishing healthy boundaries. The true breakthrough came in September when Ashley got a promotion at work. Instead of immediately upgrading her lifestyle, as she would have in the past, she called me. "I'm thinking about putting the extra money toward my credit card debt," she said, sounding uncertain. "But part of me feels like I should reward myself for the promotion." What would you do? The fact that she asked for my opinion rather than dismissing my approach represented enormous growth. Why not do both? I suggested. Put 80% toward debt reduction, and use 20% for something special, but reasonable. She liked this balanced approach, and actually followed through with it. When she paid off her second credit card the following month, we all celebrated with a family dinner, one that I hosted and cooked myself. As Thanksgiving approached, my mother surprised everyone by suggesting we change our traditional gift-giving approach for the upcoming holidays. "I've been thinking about what Samantha said about thoughtfulness versus price tags," she explained. "What if we focus on experiences rather than things this year? Maybe each person plans one family activity instead of buying presents." Ashley looked skeptical. "Like what?" "Like the cooking class I'm signing us up for," Mom replied with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. "I thought we could learn to make a traditional holiday meal from scratch together." The old Ashley would have rolled her eyes or made a cutting remark. The new Ashley simply nodded and said, "That could be fun." For my experience gift, I organized a family hiking trip to see the fall foliage, complete with a picnic I had prepared and a photographer to capture some new family photos. Ashley, in perhaps the clearest sign of her transformation, planned a budget-conscious weekend at a cabin by the lake using a vacation deal she had researched extensively. By Christmas, 1 year after the incident that had started this journey, our family dynamic had shifted dramatically. We still had disagreements and moments of tension, but they no longer followed the same destructive pattern. We had developed new ways of communicating, new methods of showing love that didn't involve financial rescue or material excess. The gift exchange that year was held at my townhouse. Each present was thoughtfully selected to match the recipient's genuine interests, rather than their perceived status. My mother gave me a telescope, finally acknowledging my childhood interest in astronomy. My father gave Ashley a beautiful leather-bound financial planner, with a heartfelt note about how proud he was of her progress. And Ashley gave me a handmade gift, a scrapbook documenting our year of family transformation, complete with photos, quotes from our more difficult conversations, and her own reflections on what she had learned. "I know it's not perfect," she said as I paged through it with tears in my eyes. "Crafting is harder than it looks." "It's beautiful," I told her sincerely. "It's the most meaningful gift you've ever given me." Later, as we prepared dinner together in my kitchen, something that would have been unimaginable a year earlier, Ashley bumped my shoulder gently. "You know, being less of a cheapskate wouldn't kill you," she said, but her smile and tone made it clear this was friendly teasing rather than a genuine criticism. "Maybe splurge on a bigger kitchen next time." I laughed. "And being more of a cheapskate has been good for you. Look at that debt reduction chart in your planner." She nodded, suddenly serious. "I actually sleep better now. Did I ever tell you that? I used to lie awake worrying about bills before." That simple admission represented more healing than I could have imagined possible 12 months earlier. We weren't perfect, but we were learning to value each other's different approaches while growing beyond our assigned family roles. The journey had been painful, confrontational, and at times seemed impossible. But standing in my kitchen with my sister, both of us changed by the courage to speak difficult truths, I knew that every uncomfortable moment had been worth it. 1 year after the kitchen confrontation, and 2 years after the cheapskate comment that started it all, our family gathered for Christmas at my parents' home. The difference from previous years was immediately apparent. The decorations were still beautiful, but noticeably less extravagant. The focus had shifted from impressing guests to creating genuine comfort and warmth. Ashley arrived carrying homemade cookies rather than shopping bags. She had moved to a smaller apartment 6 months earlier, significantly reducing her rent and commute time simultaneously. The designer wardrobe had been partially sold off, with her remaining pieces carefully selected and maintained rather than constantly replaced with new trends. I kept the pieces I actually love, she had explained when downsizing her closet. Turns out that's about 20% of what I owned. My sister's progress toward financial independence had been remarkable. She wasn't debt-free yet, but she had paid off 3 credit cards and created an emergency fund that had already saved her from calling our parents twice. More importantly, she had developed a healthier relationship with money, one based on her actual values rather than appearances. The weirdest part is that I don't miss most of the stuff, she told me as we helped prepare the holiday meal together. I thought I would feel deprived, but mostly I feel lighter. My parents had undergone their own transformation. Dad had finally retired, something that would have been financially stressful under the old family dynamic. Mom had discovered a genuine interest in interior design that focused on creating comfort through thoughtful arrangement rather than expensive purchases. They had even sold their oversized home and moved to a lovely, but more manageable townhouse community. We've redirected the money we used to spend on Ashley toward our travel fund, my mother confided during our now regular mother-daughter lunch dates. Next year, we're taking that Mediterranean cruise we've talked about for 20 years. As for me, I had learned that standing up for myself didn't mean losing my family, it meant creating the possibility of a healthier one. I had also allowed myself some controlled splurging, after years of rigid frugality, finding a middle path that honored my practical nature while still embracing occasional indulgences. The gift exchange that Christmas was nothing like the materialistic display of previous years. We had maintained our new tradition of experience gifts supplemented by a few thoughtful physical presents. My father had arranged sailing lessons for the family in the spring. Mom had booked a weekend cooking retreat. I had organized a stargazing camping trip with the telescope that had become a beloved shared interest. Ashley's gift to everyone was perhaps the most symbolic of her change. She had created financial legacy journals for each of us, with sections for recording our money stories, financial values, and lessons we wanted to pass on to future generations. I've been thinking about how money patterns travel through families, she explained as we opened them. If we don't consciously examine them, we just pass them along without question. After dinner, as we sat around the fireplace drinking hot chocolate, homemade, not from the gourmet shop as in previous years, my father raised his mug in a toast. To Samantha, he said, his voice thick with emotion, who had the courage to tell us what we needed to hear, not what we wanted to hear. My eyes filled with tears as the family I had always loved, but often felt alienated from raised their mugs in agreement. It wasn't easy, I acknowledged. There were moments I thought I had destroyed our family forever. You saved it, my mother said simply. We were on an unsustainable path in more ways than one. Ashley nodded. I was headed for a lifetime of financial anxiety and dependency. I didn't see it then, but I do now. Later, as Ashley and I washed dishes together, a mundane activity that had become a cherished time for sister conversations, she brought up the incident that had started it all. I think about that Christmas party a lot, she admitted. How cruel I was about your handmade album. I still have it, I told her. Dad rescued it from the discarded wrapping paper and gave it to me later. "I'd like to see it sometime," she said. "I think I can appreciate it properly now." The journey from that painful moment to this peaceful one hadn't been smooth or simple. There had been backsliding, heated arguments, and painful revelations along the way. But standing beside my sister, both of us with soapy hands and easy conversation, I knew we had built something precious from the broken pieces of our former relationship. The lessons I learned through this family transformation run deeper than money management. I discovered that sometimes the most loving action isn't the easiest one. Standing by while my sister continued down a self-destructive path would have been simpler than confronting the painful truth, but it wouldn't have been genuinely supportive. I learned that family roles can be renegotiated, even after decades of reinforcement. The responsible one and the special one weren't immutable identities, but patterns we could consciously examine and modify. Perhaps most importantly, I discovered that courage and compassion must work together. Courage without compassion becomes harsh judgment. Compassion without courage becomes enabling. The delicate balance between them created the possibility for authentic change. Our family continues to work on our relationship with money and with each other. We still have disagreements and moments of tension. Old patterns occasionally resurface, especially during times of stress. But we now have the tools and the willingness to address these issues openly rather than allowing resentment to fester beneath the surface. Ashley and I have developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect rather than obligatory sisterhood. We appreciate each other's different strengths and perspectives, recognizing that my practicality and her creativity are complementary rather than oppositional qualities. As for the cheapskate label that once cut me so deeply, I've reclaimed it with good humor. Last Valentine's Day, Ashley gave me a coffee mug emblazoned with "Proud Cheapskate" and a heart. I use it every morning as a reminder of how far we've come. True wealth, I've learned, isn't measured by designer labels or luxury vacations. It's found in relationships strong enough to withstand difficult truths. It's built through the courage to live authentically rather than performatively. It's sustained by valuing connection over consumption. If you're watching this and struggling with similar family dynamics, I encourage you to consider whether keeping the peace is truly serving your family's long-term well-being. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is the truth they need to hear, delivered with both courage and compassion. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure around money or lifestyle choices? What happened when you did? Share your experience in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more authentic conversations about family dynamics. Remember, transformation begins with a single moment of courage. Yours might be just around the corner. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and wisdom on your own family journey.